Some of the lights cannot be muted, and sigh and wheeze and snort.
Yeah, I noticed there's
belch.
always a red light on it, no matter what you do.
You just gotta turn it away from me.
When it's working?
From over here, I have to say.
Let's see who's
That
camping.
never.
There's a couple plugs, they're plugged this way. That's a hell of a caution.
I'm good.
Yeah, that's one that will, that's one. And yours will? Okay, yeah, yours is good. Yours is good?
It has been so far, yeah, I clicked it
Let's
off.
see. So you just turn it on.
Yeah, let me check this later. Make sure myself saying just this stone, it's still stone. Yeah, then I wrote photo instead of four. Yeah. But if it's correctly there, I'm pretty sure, well, sometimes we all put photos, but these are. That's oh, it's crossed. That's the only thing I found, it's not too bad. Yeah, not too bad.
Oh, it could be right here.
Should be in the back.
Yeah, there it is.
Just that. Okay, so that's why I make sure they just fix it in the one that they need to use. Page 1.
Where's the one I want?
I'm not in the condo, we send out mailings to 300 volunteers. Either by email or not. And on the board, the board is kind of, they were voted, so yeah, I'll go up there. Give us the holiday. It's not going to change the issue. Is this something that I need to keep in here? I think this is the first year I send it out, and every year there's something.
And the computer sometimes corrects stuff, and it's like, no, that's not what I said. It's not what I wanted. I had 5 people, 5 people. I refused to take what is it? Yeah, there you go. Ain't that the truth?
That's a higher salary than on the wall. I'm glad I'm not the only one that's disappointed about that.
No, not at all. But we're just gonna get what we pay for. So we're just gonna get more of the same as what we pay for.
Yeah. If we would have saved a lot of money by spending another $30,000 on salary and not going through all the BS.
There's just so much in the world, just.
Exactly my thought.
I mean, to me, I'm sorry.
Close the bidder, that's what we got, right?
I was gonna put the job application in the paper, that's what we did.
I want to see that 27
What I really want to know is what 8th grader got participation prices for class project.
Well, I've always found two things that are wrong, and one thing that you shouldn't do.
Did what?
They left out the Hispanic population.
No, they didn't.
Where is it?
It's on the next one.
Oh, I see, okay.
Say, that's a huge population.
Good evening.
Good evening, and I apologize. I just The rain didn't help, let's put it that way, but I didn't get out as early as I should have, period.
We heard a lot of that tonight about the rain. We took a little recess. We went through and just did a few housekeeping things, so we'll give you a couple of minutes to get set up, and then if you want to let me know whenever you're ready to get started, we'll go ahead and continue on.
Thank you. Well, I might actually.
Chris, I'm staring longingly at your coffee.
You didn't bring enough for all of us?
Hey, I braved the rain and the traffic.
I hit a deer today. I don't want to hear your excuses.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
Did you go to the new one?
And you brought dinner.
Do you not?
I tried, but it got away. Bambi got up and braved it.
Chris?
Yes.
Did you go to the new Dunkin' Donuts drive-through?
No, I went to the one by the house over on Fort Smith.
Yeah, everybody complains about Dunkin'. I've never had a problem with Dunkin'.
The one at Fort Smith and Howland's always out of everything.
No, I've never had that problem.
That's the bad one. I heard the guy that has that one has another one the same way.
I've never had that problem with that one.
I've never had the correct word on it.
Really?
Once.
Interesting.
I will get a regular coffee.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've never had a problem with the one by Deltona High School. I haven't been to the new one in Providence yet.
Sure, why not?
Great, all right. So the next item is item 4A, some discussion and review and approval of the Deltona City Manager Recruitment Brochure. So similar to the last meeting, and for those that were not able to make the last meeting, is we'll go around the room, get everyone's feedback on the document provided. If you it's okay, you could pass, right, because we do have a lot of people, so if we could keep it moving, that would be fantastic. And just to break it up a little bit, maybe we'll go ahead. Yes, sir?
I was going to ask if maybe we wanted to do it by section.
Sure.
Might be a little easier than, otherwise we'll be hopping all over the place.
Yeah, did you want to do it by specific pages? Or by do you want to start with the introduction portion,
Yeah.
which I think goes through page 3?
Yeah, that would be great.
All right. So we'll start with Member Carolyn.
Well, just a suggestion, since not everybody may have something to say, do we want to just go by section, and if you got something to say, move your name tag up?
There you go.
We could expedite it.
Absolutely. So if you don't have anything to say, you can leave your name tag flat, and I'll move on to the next member. If you have something to say, kind of like what we've been doing, you could put your placard standing up, and we'll go ahead and we'll pause at you.
Okay, well, at first glance, the introduction to me is too wordy. I think that actually the whole document is too wordy. I have questions about some other issues that I just think don't even belong in here. And if I were going to put together a job posting, I wouldn't do it this way. That's my opinion. I just think it's too wordy. I think there's a lot of things in here that are, you put all of our words together and you took all of our feedback, and I applaud you for that, because you just verbatim pretty much put our words together in this. And that's great. But I just think that there's, I could just say Deltona holds many festivals and events throughout the year, period. And not go into, a lot of this is Googleable, in my opinion, so.
Great, and maybe a good point to start with, if you would all wouldn't mind indulging me for a moment, is so if we got an understanding of what the intent of this document is, because I don't know that it's necessarily to be used for a job posting as much as to potentially give to folks that actually apply for the role or are interviewing. So maybe that's a good point to start at with Mr. Basinger.
Yes, it probably is. Our goal, and we recognize that the document is lengthy. It may be overkill. That's really your call. But our goal is to give the candidates everything they need to know about Deltona to make a preliminary decision on whether or not they want to apply here. So there's a lot of information on what it's like to live here. That's the hook, so to speak. There's a lot of information on the issues. There are some sections that are probably not that important to anyone, like the history, although history does tell you a little bit about where you're at and where you're going to have to go in the future. So the way it's set up, by having it in sections, a candidate who's not interested in reading the history can move on to the next section, so on and so forth. But, and they can glance through the ones that they're not particularly interested in, perhaps. But again, what we're afraid of is that if we do not give them a lot of information, that they'll set the document aside. I'll look at this again in a week or so when I've got some time, and they may never come back to it, and they may never apply. So that's our goal, is to give them more information than they probably need.
All right, thank you very much. All right, Member Edwin?
Yes, good evening, everybody. More information is better than less, period. Number two, I spent 30 years in the Army, and every place I moved to, and every battalion or division or whatever, you have a incoming briefing. You have to read a book of the standard operating procedures. It tells you everything about the fort, the units, what have you. You have to read it, and on the bottom you have to sign it that I read that damn thing, so you knew what was going on in that fort. So I think it's a pretty good approach to let the candidates know this is what it's all about, Deltona. The guy's going to take it and he's going to probably highlight here, highlight there, and he will read whatever he thinks is appropriate for him to know. But I think the more, the better.
Great, thank you. Member Shimkus?
Thanks. So I would agree with Edwin on that. It's that the purpose of a document like this, and I have a little bit of experience in kind of working with C-level suite people in recruiting and such. And so one thing to keep in mind with this kind of a document is that the audience it's going to is a very different and very specific audience. And one thing that we want to do with this document is not only sing our praises, acknowledge our challenges, and get them to have that information, but from this document, they're also going to understand how we view ourselves. So the more information, the more narrative that we put out there, they get to see a sense of how does the commission, how does the group that made this together, how do they see our city, how do we want to present our city, and that is as informative to someone at this level looking for an opening than just what they can Google. Like, I understand they can Google, and you're right, but it has multiple levels of need. So while I understand what you're saying and certainly understand the point there, I think it's just important to keep in mind that this is a different target audience that we're looking at for that. When we talk about just the introduction section here, I think also part of the question that Tara had, and also the purpose of this document, where is it going to be found, how is it going to be distributed? Are we looking at producing additional formats? Is there going to be like a different format, a leaflet of some kind that's going to be kind of attached to it in some other way, or produced in other venues?
What we do is to post it on our website, the full document, and then we will email the front page of the document to about 13,500 people that are interested in local government management. Many of them are city managers. There'll be a link at the bottom where they click on it, and it will take them right to the brochure. Now, when we advertise it, say in ICMA, International City County Management Association, there'll be a brief ad that has a link to the brochure as well. And it'll be the same thing with the Florida League of Cities, the Florida City County Management Association. But that's the approach we take. We'll email the front page, and then where we advertise it, we have a brief ad that, takes some of this, but it's probably, it might be a third of a page long as opposed to 9 or however many this is.
12.
12, okay. And things like the organization chart, you could take that out, but I think it's helpful for somebody that's going to be a manager who wants to manage this community to actually see what they might be dealing with.
That's probably the most valuable thing I see in the first 7 pages.
Probably is.
So, okay, that makes sense. I would ask a couple things then. Just, I don't want to get caught up in too much of minutia. I'm going to assume this is a draft level document because there are quite a number of typos and structural problems in it that I'm hoping we'll see. Just as a couple of things, there's a strikeout of the word chain in one paragraph. I don't know if that was intentional to be. I don't know if that was intentional or not. You have as much as a 1.5 million currently. That's missing some context there. I understand it's about a house, but is it currently for sale? Is it like what? It's just worded oddly there. And then there are, a number of other ones. Like I said, I don't want to get into that kind of minutia. I'm going to assume this is kind of a draft that we're still going to be seeing a final of. I would also just point out that when you're putting a document together like this, I would suggest that we never allow a chart to break across pages because it loses a lot of context. So I would certainly look at those things as well, but I'll leave that where it is. So when you, and then I guess the last question based on what you had just mentioned, when we say we're mailing out the front page, are we literally saying page 1 of this 12, or is there like a separate introduction page that we may not have that's what actually getting emailed out?
There's actually a second step to this where we put it into kind of a glossy document form that has pictures and other things like that.
Yeah, I would have assumed that was going to be part of it too. Okay, that makes sense.
We've started on that. I would think it would be ready tomorrow to send to you all.
Okay.
And if there's any, the things you found certainly will be helpful. If you want to email them to me, I'll make sure they get corrected in the document.
Okay, I can do that. And that's all I have for the introduction.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Thank you, Troy. Member Novick?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was helpful to hear that there was going to be some pictures because this is titled a recruitment brochure. Typically, when I think of a brochure, I think of pictures and charts and not just, a wordy document. I think it's important to keep in mind that what we don't want a candidate doing is Googling misinformation. So this document, although maybe wordy, it's important because it will be the official information for recruiting from the city of Deltona. Certainly any candidate worth their salt is going to review city commission meeting tapes, go to the website, possibly talk to people in the community, department heads, so on and so forth. But this is going to be the city commission's official position on describing Deltona and what they're looking for in terms of a candidate. There is a lot of discussion or verbiage in here referring to the Central Florida area. We're not hiring a city manager that is going to run Central Florida. Mm-hmm. We're hiring a city manager that's going to run the city of Deltona. And so I think at the very least, and I understand the draw of highlighting Disney, that's great if it's a tourist brochure, but this is not a tourist brochure. This is a brochure to attract the highest level official person in our city. And so if anything, concentrating on things that are more Volusia oriented, for instance, emphasis on Blue Springs. Unless I missed it, I see no mention of Blue Springs. There is a mention in here somewhere of the Speedway, but certainly the Speedway and the world's most famous beach are draws to the Volusia County area. We highlight festivals that we hold within the city, and that's good. That's a little, gives you the little Mayberry effect, I call it. But I think it's also important to recognize things such as we have a tremendous amount of home-based businesses here. And in a residential community, a city manager's, one of their goals, I think, would be to try and move those home-based businesses into brick and mortar. And so certainly it's noteworthy that that would be a challenge, whether that's in the introductory section or the challenges portion. And when we go down on page 2 of 12 here, we're talking about anyone seeking higher education, that paragraph there, and we talk about Emory-Riddle, and we talk about Stetson, and we mention Daytona Beach State College, but we don't mention that there's a campus right here, right next to this building. And it's in its infancy, so certainly that's noteworthy, I think, to bring to light that there's a tremendous partnership between the city, Daytona State College, and institutions such as our healthcare facilities. When we talk about healthcare facilities, we don't mention the fact that, unless I missed it, and correct me anybody if I'm wrong, please, that Halifax is here in our city. They're expanding, they're providing major medical support to our community, and they've partnered with the University of Florida to bring that healthcare service to our city. We could go on and on talking about the I-4 corridor and the importance of Deltona and the I-4 corridor and how important it is to bring, in order to bring our city forward, you have to be able to move goods, services, and people efficiently. And certainly the I-4 corridor, Sunrail, Brightline, both of those I don't see mentioned in here. And of course, I-95 on the east side moving up and down to the Space Coast, which again, more emphasis should be placed on the space program in the Central Florida area for a city manager, I think, rather than the tourist industry of Walt Disney, because we have many, many residents that have moved to Deltona supporting the space program because it's an affordable place to live. And I-95 provides easy access to that, and tying that transportation and I-95 together, if you look at future planning about creating a direct link from 415 over to I-95, certainly something that a city manager could move the commission forward in that area. So those are just some of my comments. I'll have a few more as we move further through the document. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Novick. Member Kathy? Oh, I was going to go around.
Okay, that's fine. For people that, anybody that's looking at this that lives in Florida knows a lot of the big ticket items in here. However, for those out of state, they may not recognize some of the items that are on here. And I think the attraction of coming to manage the city of Deltona all by itself is not enough. You got people out there with a lot of varied interests, and I think this includes a lot of those. You know, there's kind of something for everyone in here, even if it's spread out of Volusia County somewhat. But coming back, kind of backing up what Mr. Novick said, the cultural venues. We have a center here. Now, mind you, we're not putting on plays and stuff like that, but we have something here that could be developed into something more. Daytona Beach has museums. You've got the Ocean Center, the Peabody, so you don't have to necessarily go all the way to Orlando for that and keep it here in Volusia County. So I feel like it's good that we're looking at a lot of different options and putting it out there for people, because something, just being the city manager of Deltona, you know, when you've got all this good stuff that you can do, being down here as well as being our wonderful city manager is a good thing.
Thank you, Kathy. Member Larry?
Yes, I do.
You're welcome.
We mentioned on the first page about us being, have a designation as a trail town. We also have a designation as a tree city, which we would want to make sure that a new manager is aware of, especially going into all the planning and development challenges that are going to be faced.
That's important.
Thank you. Member Haynes?
So everything that was, everything that was said, I agree with. I don't know if that worked.
Push the button there, and the green light should come on.
It's on.
Okay.
The light's on, so, okay. I agree with everything that was said. There's a lot of great points there. When I moved for work 2 or 3 times, and I wish that my companies would have given me this as I'm considering my options. You know, I'm sitting there and I'm looking, like, I had never been to Florida when I took my job moving here. And I did it on blind faith, came down to the house hunting trip, took the job. I'm reading things about my city I didn't know that I'm like, hey, I'd like to live here. Like, there's some really good stuff in here that I lived in this city for 11 years and I didn't realize some of the things that I'm just reading in this recruiting brochure. It is a thick packet, but for the type of position I feel like that we're looking for, this isn't we're hiring a cashier for home. You know, this is somebody bringing your family here and we're hoping that they'll build a career here. So I feel like having a lot of information is good. I do agree that somebody could, you know, if I were looking at it, I may not have interest in certain things and I would just peruse it and scratch it out and go on to the next thing. But I think the level of candidate and the caliber that we hope to bring to our city, I feel like this is I'm in marketing and sales, so this is my sales package.
Absolutely.
This is my presentation or my pitch, if you will, for our city to those candidates to say, hey, come talk to us. Don't go talk to whoever. Don't consider those guys. We're awesome. Here's why. Here's our highlights. Here's our faults. Here's where we have growth opportunity. But I do feel like, there are a few things, yes, we could change, maybe cut back on some of the wording, but overall, I think the layout of it, I think the way that it's set up is really good. I think that it's something, as I said, think of it as a sales pitch. You're selling the city to this candidate to convince them to consider us. Obviously, this isn't going to be, they're not going to read this the first thing. They're going to see the little job description. They'll click the link. And if they're truly interested, that's when for me, I would be digging in and doing my research. And I do agree, I'd rather see it here than Google or Facebook it or whatever, because we all know there's all kinds of junk out there. There's good stuff and there's other stuff. So I think, as somebody had said, this would be the commission's official position for the city. I think that's really important. That's it.
Great, thanks, Terry. Davison, before we go, Joyce, can I just confirm, did Member Hannon join us via Teams? I don't think so. Okay, sorry. Member Davison, or I'm sorry, Co-Chair Davison.
Member works. First thing that I noticed is too long, didn't read it. The second thing I wrote is it sounds too touristy, like a sales guy wrote it. Now, understanding the purpose of the document, I can get back to the sales kind of pitch a little bit. But it sounds like don't take offense to this, anybody, but it sounds like a cheap sales guy wrote it. I would, since this is, you mentioned the front page is going to be what is sent out to everybody, I would suggest a summary section to precede the introduction, because this first page tells you absolutely zero about the job. And it doesn't really tell you much about the city either. I would remove a lot of the parts, like somebody had mentioned, that are not applicable to the city and really not even related to the city. It's very clunky. It's mentioned that while cultural activities, entertainment, dining, and shopping opportunities are limited within the city, but then 2 paragraphs down, you talk about the cultural center and all of the things that happen there. And then a few more paragraphs down, you talk about all the other stuff that's available. So it just seems very clunky and out of place. There's also things like this paragraph in the middle of page 2 that says a city is composed of many planned communities and developments. I think that's very misleading. There's really not a lot unless you consider like Deltona Lakes a planned community, which technically I guess it is, but it's not in the sense that it's got an HOA and it's got a specific entrance or any of those things that come to mind when I think of a planned community. The last paragraph on page 2 starts out with, as with any large city, some areas are very safe while others are not. I don't think that's necessary. They can look up crime stats on their own. It actually, the second sentence specifies what Crime Scout says. I think that just kind of paints it in the negative light right off the bat. If we are going to mention some of the things that aren't so attractive about the city, but yet should be conveyed, then I think that it needs to be preceded with positive and not jump right into the negative. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it there. I think it's very clunky, and if we're a day away from putting this on glossy paper and sending it out, I think we need to really take a step back before we make ourselves look like fools.
Thank you. So I won't repeat what has already been covered. I'll cover just a few. I echo what Troy said about the typos and the grammatical errors, and while I know every one of us will be happy to be a proofreader and email you things, I would just like to also urge that you also get multiple people and multiple eyes on this, because this does represent our city. Sure. And if it goes out with just, one grammar error or typo or incorrect punctuation, it just doesn't reflect well on our city. Something else I don't think that I saw listed was anything about the scrub jay. So that
Scrub jay?
that may be something that we want to include. I know that that's something our city is very proud of and takes a lot of pride in.
Could you give me a little more detail on the scrub jay?
It's the scrub jay bird. We're the only, I'm sure someone in here knows more about it than I do, but I believe that Deltona is the only natural habitat of the natural environment of the scrub jay bird.
It's an endangered species.
Thank you, Larry.
I might suggest that where you would include information about that is where we talk about the parks and stuff, and that Lyonia is a scrub jay habitat protected on Section 16.
Yep.
Thank you.
Designated preserve.
Yes.
And then my last comment is, and this echoes a little bit what someone else said, there's a lot of information about the surrounding areas in the introduction and throughout. I personally would almost rather see it focus city first, and then maybe there be a separate section towards the end about the surrounding areas. Okay. So folks can just really hone in on what makes Deltona the great city that it is and that it can be.
Okay.
All right.
Can I just say one more?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So back to
Carolyn, sorry.
Thank you. Back to the healthcare part of it. Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville is not our. I just don't see us needing to even discuss Jacksonville. It's an hour and a half away when Orlando is 35 minutes away, and they have great facilities. But I would more focus on the Halifax. They just built an ER. They just built a hospital. They're planning to build another emergency room facility here in the town, and I would focus more on what we have in our city and not what we have on the outskirts in Mayo or Gainesville, any of those places that are 2 and 3 hours away. ORMC, the Women's and Children's Hospital in Orlando is exemplary. That's closer, but I'd rather focus on the medical that we have within our city limits.
Excellent, very good. Yes, member, can I still, Lisa?
One of the biggest questions I get from my family members or any of my friends up north is, where do you live? And I say Deltona. And they have this look on their face like, okay, Daytona? I say, no, Deltona. Well, where is it? I say, well, it's in between Orlando and Daytona Beach. Oh, that's nice. Are you far from Disney? No, I'm not too far, about an hour. Well, how about the beach? Well, I'm probably about 45 minutes away from the beach. And I think any city manager, probably coming from San Francisco, Chicago, New York, his or her family is going to be asking the same questions. You're a city manager of Deltona, but once we get there, what's there to do? I mean, Deltona is very nice, but it's very limited. And I think you have to present some of these places where they can go to, other than Deltona. They can go to Disney, they can go to the beach, they can go to DeLand for a festival. So I think it's important to present to the city manager and their families that there are options other than in Deltona where they could go to. Most people, when they arrive in Florida, generally it's in the middle of winter. They get off the plane in January. There's 2 feet of snow where they live. And they look up into sunshine and they say, boy, this is the place for me. And when they get here, they realize that there's not a delicatessen on every corner. So you need to let them know that, you know, there are places outside of Deltona that they can go to if they so choose to bring a family with them. So I think it's important to give them a background of just not Deltona, but what's surrounding also Deltona.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think there was a good suggestion there that earlier in connection with what you just said, which was, you know, let's focus on Deltona to start with and then have maybe a separate section to talk about the surrounding area.
Yeah. Or just combine it so that like we can talk about the things that Deltona has. And then if there's something that Deltona doesn't have a lot of, then mention that the surrounding area does offer that, so that it's not, I want to,
yeah.
I literally wrote clunky in multiple sections across multiple pages of the introduction. And I think if we start breaking things up, you know, like
it's more clunky.
It gets even more clunky. So if we're going to talk about, I think we should talk about the highlights that Deltona has, and then areas where, you know, say cultural activities, we have cultural activities. We don't have a plethora of them, but then that's where the comment then comes in that outside or just in the immediate vicinity or within an hour or 45 minutes of Deltona, there are a plethora of them. So organize it by kind of context or topic, and then what Deltona does have, and then if there's an opportunity to present more in the region, then present it at that point, not just what Deltona has, and then a separate section for what they don't.
So what you might do is have the cultural center in Deltona, and then talk about maybe the Peabody and the Ocean Center and the Dr. Phillips Center, kind of in the same general area.
Exactly. For additional, you know, Deltona's got wonderful opportunities at the center. Additional opportunities are available close by at these locations.
Okay. I'm going to need to step out to the restroom for just a second. I'm sorry.
All right, no worries. We'll take a 5-minute recess.
You can combine demographics all together.
Yeah, I mean,
I really liked a lot of your comments.
I think I like it. I like that you're checking on readjusting the
There's just, I hope I didn't offend anybody, but it really sounded like, reading through this, it sounds like a cheap sales guy wrote it. Well, and I think so the Mayo Clinic, I highlighted that as well, and that's, I think.
Yeah, that was one that I had.
can't talk about it. Can't talk about it. Sorry.
We're on a break.
We're in the same room and the mics are on. And
I know it's hard.
Oh, you don't want me saying this. Trust me.
the disappointment is real.
You hit it. I'm in sales for 30 years. I sell digital, social media, auto industry, marketing, building. We're not trying to get a homeowner. We're trying to get signatures.
Yeah, one of the things that I really like and can really appreciate when I see a good sales document is that it's cohesive, it flows, and at no point in reading it do I ever think, oh wait, they mentioned something about that before. Because if there's a mention of it in multiple places, then it just doesn't flow or read well. It's less functional, it takes away from its functionality. We were about to put this in the last papers. Got me feeling like the bad guy today. I don't feel very eloquent, especially when I didn't know that this is just what I'm noticing in the 5 minutes. Oh yeah, don't look any deeper. No. Do not look deeper.
I know.
Somebody
All right, I think we are all right, we have all returned, so why don't we go ahead and resume? All great comments. I think in the interest of time, if you all don't mind, because we do have 9 more pages to get through, is our next go-around, why don't we combine history, geography, demographics, climate, and commerce. So we combine pages 3 through 5 in our next feedback. And just to keep it different, right, because we need a little variety in life, we'll start to my right. So we'll start with member Terry. Same rule. If you have a comment, put your placard up. If you don't, you can keep your placard down, and we'll just move on to the next person. Terry, we'll give you a second because I know I just sprung that on you with starting with you.
Can you remind us which sections, I'm sorry?
Yes or no? It's history, so page 3, geography, demographics, climate and commerce, so page 3 through page 5.
Okay.
And Terry, if you don't mind, we could go to member Larry and come back to you. All right, he's got his placard up. He's ready to go.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, on page 3, you get into history. We've got a lot of history, and this is one of the areas that's vaguely made known to all of our residents here. We do have a lot of history here. It mentions in here about Lake Monroe and Enterprise. There was the Brock House that was built there in 1854 before the schoolhouse that's mentioned there. It was a major stopover. There was also a Union raid by gunboats right at our doorstep here, and we, in our city limits, had one of the distinction of one of the Rosenwald schools that was built here in Volusia County during the segregationist era. So that's quite an accomplishment. Also in the information about as we start zooming into the modern era with our development, it'd be interesting if people knew, just like some of the staunch, very proud community people up in DeLand know, about the origin of our name. And it should be included in there that we are a combination of DeLand and Daytona, and that's how it gained Deltona. They get really antsy about not having a capital L in DeLand stuff, so you see that stuff all the time. Under the geography, it might be worth mentioning, too, if this person's going to be involved in any of our planning and how our hydrologic stuff works here. We're right on the edge of the DeLand Ridge, which is why a lot of those unique environmental things occur right down there near Thornby and all along this whole stretch of Lakeshore Drive with the hammock and everything on the river swamp. How far do you want us to go?
Through page 5.
Okay, on page 5 with commerce, might want to mention there that we do have some commerce areas, or mention something like Deltona Plaza and some of these other areas in our locale, like the area around the Epic Theater. These are all things that are going to be hot points for any kind of manager in the coming days with our development and everything else. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Member French. Member Haynes, back to you. You're good? All right. Member Kathy.
Thank you. First, when you look at any of this stuff, go in to out. Start with what's here, and I think that's what you're but just to summarize that, in to out.
Exactly.
Weather. I think no matter where you go, there's going to be some form of weather events. So I don't know if we have to point out the hurricanes. Sure, they're going to happen. Other places have earthquakes. Other places have blizzards. Other places have, tornadoes. So I don't know if we have to necessarily focus on them. I've seen worse summer thunderstorms than I have some of the tropical storms and stuff that have passed by us. So.
The electrical outages, too, as a result of that.
Correct. Correct. And also in the commerce, there is a lot of potential for, an increase in the medical field, looking for adding some of that stuff in, adding, potential for light industrial in some of these corridors, and the opportunity to make something of some of the stuff that has been here for a long time that could use some, general makeover. That's the word I was looking for.
Do you have any industrial parks in Deltona?
No.
Not really as yet, but we could have.
Okay.
The area that's zoned industrial would be up around by Epic Theater where
Right.
Amazon and that is.
Okay.
We've got inland materials up there is probably the heaviest industrial type of business that we have, and it's a relatively small concrete plant. But that's where the primary zoning for industry is, up around that area.
So, but there is some, and that was something I was not aware of.
It's pretty much light and clean.
Okay. And I did have one other question. The building that's going up across the street, that is part of Daytona State, is that what it is?
That's going to house their one-stop nursing program.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And they also own the building that we're in right now.
They do not.
They don't.
They do not. That is incorrect. They own the land. The city, they don't own the land. The state owns the land. This is on Section 16. It's leased for $1 a year for 100 years.
Okay, learned something new.
Member Novick?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Talking about geography, the gentleman was talking about some issues with the surrounding, like the land area and that. I think because one of the hottest button issues in Florida today, not only in Volusia County, but all the state of Florida, is water. So certainly it's probably noteworthy to mention that we sit over the Blue Springs watershed. So if they are a candidate worth their salt, they're going to investigate the Blue Springs watershed and our manatees and what that means when we start talking about consumptive use permit to be able to pump so much water out of the ground, and the reclaim programs and all of that associated stuff. Again, this is a place to talk about also, I think, the expanding I-4 corridor. The I-4 corridor even makes national news in political times because it is a significant, it has significant influence, and we sit, depending on how you want to look at it, either at the head of it or at the foot of it. Certainly our location along the I-4 corridor also plays into climate because that is where most of our weather sets up, where the East Coast and West Coast sea breezes meet on a daily basis. So the I-4 corridor is a significant value to mention. When we're talking, I don't know if this is the right place to talk about commerce in the commerce section, but I think it's noteworthy also to mention that we're serviced by two different power companies in our city, both Florida Power and Light and Duke. Thank you, senior moment. And the gas company for the areas that do have gas that's brought in underground, it is natural gas and it's brought in by Florida Public Utilities. Other areas that are serviced by gas, including many of our restaurants, it's by tank and it's serviced by LP gas. When you're looking at the principal employers, I find it's very odd that, again, I don't know who provided this data or where it came from, or I know it says principal employers Deltona, but Volusia County Schools is the largest employer of anybody in Volusia County, and we have more schools in Deltona than any place else in Volusia County. So I think we probably, in the top 10, Volusia County Schools has got to be a pretty big number of teachers and administrative staff that work within the city of Deltona and its numerous schools, 2 high schools, 3 middle schools, and I think 9 elementaries maybe? I might be off on that, but close to 9, 7 to 9, that are just public schools. So certainly Volusia County Schools is a very large employer and noteworthy. Previous city managers have had spouses that have worked in the school system and had children that attended those public schools. And Madam Chair, where did you want to stop for that section?
Right where you are at commerce.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
You're very welcome, thank you. Member Shibkis.
Thank you. Yeah, lots of echoes. I think the climate and geography is an interesting thing. I don't think we need to spend as much words on that. So if we're looking at reducing words, that's certainly an area I could advocate to reduce some words or combine those two sections. But also to echo, there's the geography piece. We should certainly focus on the hydrology of the area, from Blue Springs to watersheds to all those things. There's a lot of unique hydrology happening, and not that it's important here, but as I'm sure we all know, the water table is changing actively and getting higher. So there's a lot of things there that I think are more important for our city manager to be aware of, not the just square miles and distances, but more the challenges of the hydrology that are going to impact that job of city manager significantly as they look at the infrastructure of Deltona. When we get to the demographics, this is another one of those just formatting things. This chart should never be allowed to break across pages like this because it does cause confusion, which is exactly why Mr. Novick did not know where the data came from on the other one, because it broke across the page. It did come from our CAFR. The reason Volusia County Schools is not listed is only because the majority of their employees do not actually live in Deltona, so it was just that kind of a measure. But again, that's a perfect example as to why we don't want charts to break across pages. The commerce section, though, I think, thinking again, from my hat of, okay, if I'm working with CEOs and C-suites about what they're going to look for here, I think they're going to be more interested here, not just, who's employing people here, but what are the commerce opportunities in Deltona? And I think a few of you have mentioned it already, but, the city has focused economically on the healthcare industry, and that's what led to these 2 new hospitals, the ERs, the cardiac center on Martin Luther King, and all the opportunities that we've heavily invested into attracting more medical, and we're also looking, I think, slightly at attracting more tech industry as well, because of the fact that we have very limited commercial zoning, industrial zoning, so we don't necessarily have the capacity to build new plants and manufacturing processes, but we do have the capacity to offer a little more on the professional business and professional industries of that nature. But also, to that point, mentioning in here about the zoning breakup. breakup, what is it? Mr. Novick might know this more than I do at the top of my head, but the 7-ish% available zoned land for commercial development. So things of that nature that they understand that, out of the entirety of the city, we have a very small piece of land available for additional future growth and development in the industry area and those things. So I think that's what I would like to see in the commerce section, more so than just a list of employers per se. And I also, I guess I'll mention it here because we've talked about it a couple of times, the education aspect. I think, and I know Carolyn will not like this, but I think we need to add another section that specifically addresses education, not only because of the higher ed education opportunities we do have here, but to what Mr. Novick was saying, our schools in general, where they are, what their populations are, what's happening in our schools locally, because I know when anyone moves here, especially with a family, they want to know about the specific schools that they're going to be zoned for. So I think it would be a better opportunity to have some more specific information about, excuse me, our local K-12 schools that are here in Deltona as well. And I'll leave that here for now. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Member Hickerson.
So I echo what you had to say about taking the chart in half, because I was like, I looked at this and I'm like, where's the Hispanic part of that?
Yeah.
And that's on the next page, because
Yeah.
that's like a huge part of our demographics. I see no demographic information on seniors. We have a huge senior population here.
Sorry, no information on what?
Seniors.
Oh, seniors.
We have a huge senior population in this city, and that should be addressed. I think that we should maybe elaborate more on the demographics. And I found one error under commerce. The Methodist Children's Home is not an employer in this area. That is in enterprise. That is in a
sorry, who's that?
completely different city. And that does not belong on our commerce page because they're not here.
Page 5, that's the...
Page 5.
The Methodist Children's Home.
They're in a completely different city. They're not even in our city. They're in enterprise.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, it did come from your CAFR, the city's CAFR.
Yeah,
I guess I can take it out.
They're not here. I mean, they do good work, and I worked in the elementary school right down the street from them, and they do great work, and they're, kudos to Enterprise for having them there, but they're not an employer of ours.
We'll take it out. I mean,
Yeah,
if they're
but
not
I would
here,
like
they
to
shouldn't be
elaborate
here.
more, and I know some of the wordiness is you were saying, the clunkiness of it. That was I'm not as eloquent as all of you, I think, but I would certainly want to elaborate more on our demographics, and I would want to have that as a single page. I wouldn't want to have that cut in half. I'd want to have that as a single page.
It won't be when we produce the final document. I'm sorry, we should have made that clear, but all of the tables will be on one page. I mean, they might be on different pages, but we won't have tables split across pages.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carolyn. Co-Chair Davis? Oh.
I'd really like to hear what Troy has to say about that, because I think I know where you're going.
No, I was just going to say, because the economic and employment data came from our own CAFR, I believe the intent of that was more not that those employers are located in Deltona, but they are employers that are employing the people who live here.
Their employees live in Deltona.
Right. So I think that's kind of more
I see.
where they actually are located as an employer. So.
And so I asked you to say that because I think that the intent of the chart should be a little bit more clear.
Yeah.
Well,
That's the only
if
comment.
if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
If that's the vein, then certainly, if we're not listing businesses that are Deltona proper, we're talking about entities that employ Deltona residents. Kennedy Space Center, Disney employ, Volusia County government employs big numbers of Deltona residents.
Yep.
So, I think we need to hone that down to be Deltona employers.
Precisely.
And look at that, because that should really be the focus in that particular chart. Certainly, we know statistically 75% of our population leaves and goes south every day on I-4. That's a different conversation than this one.
Yep.
This is about Deltona employers, and Methodist Children's Home is not a city of Deltona-based business. It may employ Deltona residents, but there are many businesses that employ Deltona residents far above these numbers.
Yep. I just wanted to make sure that we honed that in and then clarified what exactly the chart describes.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think it should be just employers within the city, and I think it would be a good idea to include the fact, I think we've got in there 75% of the people commute, but we could mention that some of them go to Disney, some of them go to the Space Center, and I don't know if there are other...
Quite frankly, I don't think it's relevant to this.
Yeah,
Let's stick with Deltona, employers in Deltona.
What about Halifax? Because considering if we're pushing medical stuff, you know, the fact that you've got that there and they employ, I don't know how much the
Troy, was
EVs
that in the
employ.
capper? Didn't make it. Yeah, I was going to say, these numbers are 2 years old, so I don't think.
It was included, yeah.
So one comment on that. If our latest CAFR is 2 years old, then I would
We should
like to
update
see
this.
all of these numbers
Yeah.
use a different source so that they're more current.
Or at least footnote
Yes.
the age of the data.
Exactly.
This shows,
Again, on a different
this
page.
shows 2022, so it would be a year old.
Oh, it is on the next page?
Yeah. It's broken, it's broken
Sorry
up.
about that.
Sorry.
It's kind of hidden at the top of the next page, and I just saw it as well.
Very good, Troy, thank you. Yeah.
So I do like how short some of these sections are, specifically the history. It sets a nice little background. I definitely appreciate that the last sentence or two discuss the incorporation of Deltona and being very recent. Geography, I agree with what has already been said. The only thing that I would like to see is that under the second paragraph, Deltona is characterized by rolling hills and abundance of lakes. I would really like to see the term closed basin used because that is the nexus of almost all of our water problems.
Closed basin?
Closed basin,
Correct.
right.
No, there's no
place for the water to
very,
flow.
very
Yeah.
limited natural outflow of water.
Yeah, no outflow.
We are essentially a bowl.
Interesting.
I'd like to see the climate section, actually, the whole section actually moved above demographics, just below geography, so that it keeps demographics, commerce together. Those are a little bit more related.
Climate above, which section, I'm sorry?
Above demographics. Just move
Demographic, that's
demographics
easy.
down one, climate up one, however you want to look at it. This kind of seems getting into even more minutia, but the temperatures in the summer can reach the low 90s, but rarely higher. I would disagree with that. I think that we should use data and just state what the average temperatures are for Deltona, the average high temperature, and then I do agree with the second part of it that we rarely get below 40, although recently we've been there.
We'll see.
Yeah. I also wrote down the education section. I think it's very important. I think it should just go right there, somewhere below demographics and commerce, or maybe even right below demographics. I'd like to see it broken out by K-12 and higher education opportunities. I understand that we don't have higher education opportunities specifically, or limited higher education opportunities in the city limits, but within 45 minutes or so, we've got a tremendous amount. And it's mentioned in the introduction, but I think we could include it as part of the graphical, section. If we're looking for somebody in their 40s, 50s, 60s, they're going to be at that age where they've got children that are in middle school, high school, transitioning to higher education, and so having those options would, I think, be beneficial. And then I'd also like there to be a chart that lists out the number of schools, elementary school, middle, high school, college, whatnot, the number of students, and the school ratings.
Okay, number of schools, let's see, elementary, middle, and And then under that, you wanted number of students. And rating. Was there anything else? Did I miss something?
I don't think so, just those three items.
School ratings.
Yeah, school ratings.
Yeah, understood. You're talking about the Florida State kind of rating?
Yeah, I believe it's specific to Florida. I think every state has something similar where they assign a letter grade and then a plus or minus.
Okay.
That's,
There's also vocational programs going through Pine Ridge, which is very, very good.
yep. And that would actually be something that would be great to highlight in the educational section.
Yes.
Through Pine Ridge, was it?
Yep, Pine Ridge Vocational Program. Thank you for that. That's definitely
great.
something to highlight.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So,
I'm sorry,
No.
do you want us to list the individual schools under like the elementary or middle?
I don't think that's
I don't think so.
necessary. I think just the number of,
reasonable.
yeah.
The only reason I was asking is that the ratings tend to be school-specific, so I'll just kind of average them, or...
Yeah, I would say list them because there's not that many of them. It should be a short list, but I think it's important for that so that when they're looking at it and they're going to go and do their own Googling, they would know specifically what school. Because although some are Deltona High School and Deltona Middle School, obviously, but Pine Ridge and some other ones have, it was a Discovery and such, they have names that may not have come up immediately. So it'd be good, I think, just to list the names. It's only 6, right?
Yeah.
And then we can take whatever length that section adds and subtract it from the introduction.
We will.
Good, all right. I also had adding schooling opportunities, which I think everyone, but I also, y'all didn't leave me much, but I did pull out a few. So the top of page 4, there is a typo in the first sentence, and named the area Deltona. It should be for its proximity, not faux, its proximity.
Faux real.
Faux real, faux show.
Sorry.
Nope, no worries.
I see it. I see it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then an additional on page 5, under commerce, second sentence, most of its residents commute to jobs outside the city. That 4 should be removed.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. And
Or just transpose them.
yeah, right? And then question, I know we were talking about the climate and the weather, and maybe I'm just reading too much into this, but do we really need to talk about it's Florida? It's hot. We're hot. Do we need to temperatures reach 90s? I don't know. Just throwing that out there.
So for some reason, real quick, I was just thinking about that also. I think we should just change that from climate, and I think weather does play a piece if somebody's coming from out of state, but we can change it to weather and take off the second paragraph about
The hurricanes, yeah. I had to put a big strike through the hurricanes, too. Yes, ma'am. Sir, I'm sorry, sir.
What if we, rather than using specific temperatures, use some verbiage like it's a tropical climate?
Yeah, I think that.
I mean, that extends up.
Most of the time.
That extends up to South Carolina, so.
Yeah, and winter only lasts like 3 weeks.
The only concern I have about taking the hurricanes out is I think when people, say in Illinois or Michigan or wherever, look at Florida, they see the Weather Channel maps where the hurricane covers the whole state and it looks terrible, and I wouldn't want to live there in a million years. But we can take it out if you like. Well, they have snowstorms, sure, but they're used to snowstorms.
Well, yeah, or then maybe remove I just feel like the latter can be serious, however, as it was with Hurricane Ian and Nicole. I feel like we're highlighting the negatives, so maybe even just strike out that last sentence and just leave it at tree damage and flooding are the primary threats.
Okay.
Or just take that out too. They traverse the area from time to time. The worst storms tend to pass. By the time it reaches Deltona, I think that's perfect.
Yep.
Let me just play devil's advocate for a second for you. There's a significant expense in the city to the tune of roughly, I think we keep like $10 million on hand for
Natural
hurricane
disasters.
issues within our city. So a city manager maybe coming from Michigan, let's say, may not be familiar with the impact. Some people may think of tropical conditions being just coastal. So I don't know. Again, if we were just hiring employees or Publix cashiers, as somebody said before, we probably would want to sell the, sunshine. But I think a city manager needs to know coming here, they better have some experience on the emergency manager side of things, because they are, in combination with the fire chief, the two senior emergency management people, both for budgeting purposes and for issuing orders to close things, to make expenses, so on and so forth. So I don't know. I don't know if this is the right spot to address that side of the issue, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't think that, so there's some state statutorial requirements on budgeting for reserves for natural reserves for disasters, and I think that would really be more of the onboarding process of why we do things there.
Again, I don't know that this is the right spot to address that side of it, but I don't think we should necessarily downplay the significance that hurricanes play within Volusia County.
But not here, I agree.
Yeah.
Put it like more in the job description. This is part of what you have to think about.
Right.
But not when you're kind of advertising, this is
Agree,
live in, blah, blah, blah.
I think that's a great suggestion.
I'm sorry, what do we want? I kind of missed that.
Take it out of this portion of it and make sure that there's note of
Something about emergency management.
Right, in the job description.
some sort of mention of emergency management or
Got it.
natural disaster.
And then I just had one more point to make before we move on. Was under commerce. I don't know if it makes sense. I know we talked a lot. I think, Troy, you touched on roughly we've got 7% geographically left to develop. Do we also want to include anything in there about the opportunity for redevelopment? Because I think that's a big opportunity for the incoming city managers. We've got, some plazas that are,
My only thought is that it's redevelopment is less significant than development. There's still a lot of raw land that is there to be built out. So I think new development is more key than redevelopment.
And I would just add to that I think the redevelopment aspect is kind of covered by the rest of the document in terms of all the descriptions of things. I think anyone who's in this industry, in this job, would read into that,
Pick that up.
there's opportunity, So.
all right, fair point. Yep, fair point.
If I could just follow up, 7% of the land is left for development. Is that all commercial?
I don't know that we've confirmed that. I think that was just a number.
Yeah, I was referring to the currently zoned land for, and I would need to, maybe you have,
I don't know.
I'm not sure if, off the top of my head, if that's currently left to zone or undeveloped. So we need to clarify those numbers, but just
We
the
could
point
leave that out.
the point of that just being, we have a highly residential to commercial ratio,
yeah.
which is very unusual.
Oh, that side of it's about 80-20. We're about 80% residential, about 20%.
Okay, then the 7 would definitely be then what land is left to be.
20%.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense then, sorry.
So that's 7% of the 20, or, I'm sorry?
I would say just leaving an
Ballpark,
80-20 split would be good enough ballpark to say 80-20 between residential and commercial, just so they understand that we don't have the capacity for massive commercial like other cities that are more.
And I don't know if there's opportunity for it in the government section, but maybe that might be a good opportunity for us to highlight we can highlight that ratio with the millage, tax revenue, the commercial revenue versus residential revenue, with how much the city brings in to highlight the commercial to residential disparity.
Yeah, I like that.
And that's where we're heading to next. So thank you for that segue. All right, so for our next section, if everyone's in agreement, why don't we move on with, we'll talk about the government, page 6. And then why don't we also weave into that the challenges and opportunities, which encompass page 7, page 8, and half of page 9. So we'll talk about page 6 through the top of page 9. And we'll use the same format with your placard. And as I see, Carolyn, you anticipated I was going to start with my left, so we will start with member Carolyn.
I kind of want to have this flipped and start with our government instead of all of the stats. I'd rather those come after our government and start our brochure with the government, with the citizens of Deltona, with the challenges and opportunities. I'd rather that we have our lead as, you know, what we're looking for, what we're expecting, what we are as a government, and then add into all of the stats and to me, fluff.
Put it in front of the introduction, or?
Yeah, I'd rather lead with what we anticipate we need and we want and what our government is, and I'd rather kind of flip it a little bit, but that's just me, so.
All right, thank you. Member Shimkus?
On the government thing, I will just keep it real brief because I know we've talked about a lot of things and a lot of it will continue through. But yeah, I think as we kind of alluded to, I think this is where we want to highlight the tax base and where it's coming from, what the breakdown is, what our sources are, so they understand. I don't know, I guess the question I had was, I don't know if there was an intent to include with your packet a summary from our budget document, or there's lots of information in there that might be relevant to include one of those charts, but just to kind of keep that in mind as that part of that process. I think, I guess just, from my opinion, for what that's worth, I guess here, I don't think I would flip too many things on that nature. I think it's important to set up the sales pitch first and say, this is what Deltona is, and I think the nitty-gritty gets into it later. So I'm comfortable with this personally, with that structure that we've got here. And I did see the note about how you're going to adjust that screen grab of the org chart, so I won't have any comments on that at the time, because I think that's smart to do, to reduce it and to remove some of that stuff. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. I think that kind of covers most of it for me anyway.
Thank you. Member Novick?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
I'll put this out there, and obviously I think everybody knows my background with the fire department, so I think it's noteworthy to include on page 6, where we're talking about all the departments, and it does mention fire rescue, that we do have fire-based transport, and so it is a revenue stream within the city. Many departments in Florida don't have that revenue stream, so we're advanced life support agency with fire-based transport. May want to include that. We've expanded on the description a little bit of the center, but certainly I think fire rescue can be included to say that it is an advanced life support agency with fire-based transport. Also, this may be the section to where I mentioned earlier about the two power companies. We have two utility companies that service the city, both Volusia County and the city-owned Deltona Water, that does both water and sewer. And along that same vein, we do have a state-of-the-art sewer treatment plant. We have two sewer treatment plants within the city. One's the original one on Fisher Drive, and the other's out off of 415 on 11th Street. That's the state-of-the-art facility that has the ability to expand for future growth, not only for the city, but also to provide services outside the city, which is a potential revenue source, because Volusia County Utilities does not provide that sewer service out to the east, to the Osteen area, which is probably one of the next very large areas of our neighbors to expand. So there's opportunity there. And for that, I don't have anything else until we get, are we doing challenges and opportunities?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
Then on page 8, the third paragraph, the last sentence, the ability to secure grants, I think we should put a comma there and put secure grants, comma, partnerships. Because certainly interlocal agreements with our surrounding communities and also the private sector.
P3s.
Pardon me?
Sorry, I agree.
Okay. So just if we insert the word partnerships there. And that's all I have till we get to ideal candidates. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Member Haynes?
So on page 8, and maybe this is just me, but I feel like the, excuse me, skipping down the second paragraph from the bottom.
Terry, I'm sorry, can you, yep, because even, I was even having trouble hearing you, thank you.
Okay, is that better?
No, because it does not work.
Okay, I'll just yell. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's not working for some reason. So on the second from the bottom paragraph, it talks about the 7,000 of the city's 36,000 water customers, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like one thing, and maybe this isn't the place to mention it, but I think something else that will come up from residents, because I'm one of them, is the overall water quality for Deltona. There are other cities that definitely have a better water quality than we do. And maybe, again, that may just be me, but I feel like that's something that might be mentioned there. Second paragraph down, it says recently Advent Health increased its presence, et cetera, et cetera. But we also just talked about Halifax, and I don't see anything mentioned in that area about Halifax there. So I think that's it for me at the moment.
Okay, great. Co-Chair Davison?
All right, so a couple of them, I actually like the order that this is in. I do think, and I don't know if Mr. Nobbitt's intent with his comment about utilities was all the way to this direct or not, but I think maybe a utility section or at least a paragraph specifying those utilities would be very advantageous. And I know we've got I've been flipping back and forth. I'm struggling with the idea myself, but we've got the organizational chart. I don't think it's necessary to include a list of all of the city departments. If we want to specify I just don't think it's necessary to include a list of them. And then that should shorten that a little bit and then give you enough room to put the org chart on the first page. And then I also think that the org chart could be, it looks like it was just a screen grab of the org chart on the city's website. I think we should be able to work with the city to get the actual org chart file. And then we could even shorten the next paragraph and put the budgeted FTEs for each department right there next to them in the org chart. Get rid of that in the words also, and shorten this up a little bit. And then kind of back to the whole too long didn't read thing. Challenges and opportunities, I haven't had an opportunity to go through that in enough detail to make intelligent comments on right now.
Fair enough. All right, thank you. The only new item I have that I don't think was brought up yet, and I know there's a lot here, so if I missed it, I apologize. But I know a common challenge that I think almost everybody in this room at our last meeting brought up was the challenge of being able to navigate 7 very different personalities. So I'm just thinking that that may be worth calling out. I mean, I'd like to think that anyone applying is going to basically know they've got 7 bosses, but it may still be worth calling out.
We can add that, certainly.
District 2, we need to scratch Anita Bradford. She has resigned from that position.
They're going to scratch all the names?
Yes, they're going to scrub all the names and just leave the positions.
I think it would be notable to highlight that that is a vacant position.
Yeah, there was text in here somewhere that actually it talked about the commission makeup, and it did indicate that there was 1 open seat.
Yeah, it's the first paragraph in the government section.
But that's likely to be filled before.
It's going to be filled
By then.
very soon,
Yeah.
before this probably even advertises. It has to be.
And do we need, like, I mean, the commissions, how many are on the commission, how it runs, but do we need, like, how long they've been there and stuff like that? Could we cut that out?
It does mention that there's 2 consecutive terms. They can only hold off the same position for 2 consecutive terms, so I think that leads into why.
The turnover, what might be the upcoming turnover,
Yes.
maybe?
For who's been there for 5 years, 3 years, 4, et cetera?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's something that managers do pay attention to is, I mean, if somebody's been on the commission for 30 years, it means something. If they've, obviously, when you've got term limits, that's not going to happen, but it is something managers look at when they look at a job.
All right. So, I'm sorry, Member Shimkus?
Sorry, I forgot that we were going into that next section. Yeah, so to that, just to that aspect, I think it would be important to kind of clarify, again, not that there's an opening, because yes, that's going to be not an opening in short term, but I think it's important to understand which seats are up for election this coming November, because that's more of a timeline when a person's going to be understanding that they are going to have new people coming in November, and they, if they're savvy enough, might decide to pay attention to the elections and get a better understanding of who's, might be there. Because I'm not understanding, I guess, the timeline. Are we expecting this position to be filled before November?
Has to be filled by, Joyce, what, the 20, it's got to be filled this month, right?
No, I'm not talking about 2. I'm talking about the city manager.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If the city manager's timeline, I'm sorry.
Vacant commission seat, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, that's next week.
Our schedule, I think, calls for this. Well, I can look at, it's one of the sections near the end. Let's see, interviews are,
have April 1st as the selection of the city manager.
Yeah.
Some of this timeline is going to have to be changed. One of the dates is like a holiday. We're not here. So there's some, the city manager and I have gone over it, kind of made some notes on it, and we're going to send that to you as well. So this is going to change.
Thank you.
And then we'll need to send it back out to everybody.
Yeah, we're fine changing any of the dates, I mean, if you need to change them, we'll change them. That's not a big deal.
Yeah, I just think it would be important for them to understand that we're, which of those seats are up for election this coming year, because that's going to be kind of in the middle of their selection, and it'd just be, I think, good for them to know that. But then you do mention in the challenges section here about some hiring issues. I think I personally would prefer that we talk a little more specifically about the department heads that are currently either interim or vacant, because, as a city manager, those are going to be your key people, and that's going to be a very important thing to know, that you're going to either be looking for brand new or needing to solidify key, I know the wording, I don't have it in front of me, sorry, it was key something, key positions or something to that effect. But I think it's critical here to let them know which departments are either empty as a department chair or being held by an interim of some kind, so they have a little better knowledge of which departments are in flux that they're going to have to be.
But those, excuse me, but those are fluid. I mean, they're advertising for department heads right now.
But ours have been open for quite a while.
Yeah, that's a problem.
So I think, I mean, I get that, but I think ours have been.
My point being, I don't know that we need to be specific about departments, because that can change tomorrow morning.
It'll probably change, yeah.
We could in general say that there's been an instability in department heads or something to that effect across the board. But you could get the finance director could quit tomorrow and you could get a new
Yeah,
whatever.
I get that. I think I'm coming from that we've had interims in several departments for, I would say, extended period of time, and that paints a different picture than we just happen to have, a person leaving. So
Can I throw
find
this
a
out
balance
there as an across-the-board idea to maybe in places where we've all talked about certain things being too wordy or charts not being right or whatever, would a possible solution be to include, rather than the verbiage, put something like, for additional information or for further information, go to this link.
Yep, and a link to the page.
Create a link, as an example, a link to the organizational chart. I'm not saying that we have to take that out, but just as an example, a link to the organizational chart or a link to current job postings on the city's website. Would that maybe be more appropriate for current information, maybe resolving some of these wordy issues by just providing a link?
I like that. I think that's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
Tara, if you don't mind. I'd like to go back to what I think Troy was talking about. And if any of the commissioners are listening or watching this, I think it's important that we do not hire department heads right now, knowing that we are going through this process to hire a city manager. And I think that we should highlight the opportunity for a city manager to bring in or hire his own team. Those vacancies are currently available. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to fall apart or whatnot within the next few months while this process takes place. So I think we should just we could rephrase that a little bit and highlight it as an opportunity for
To build
an
their own
incoming
team.
city manager to build a team of their own with these vacancies, the deputy city manager positions and any department head positions.
That's really a selling point.
Yeah, yes. And he doesn't have to fire anybody to do it.
Well, again, to highlight the fact that we could highlight that there are many upper-level positions currently open, but you're assuming that we're going to get a candidate hired within the next year before there's an election. I'm just saying, if I was a city manager candidate, I don't know that I'd be looking to pack up my family and move from North Carolina or from Pensacola to Deltona, knowing that you've got an election in November and the city still has to operate. So the current acting city manager, by charter, has the authority to hire and fire.
Mm-hmm.
The commission could take any action they really want to take, but you have to be able to conduct business. So if you have an essential function deemed by the acting city manager that he needs to fill, they really shouldn't tie their hands in anticipation. I worked here for a long time, and I've been through several city managers, both as an employee and as a commissioner, and I've watched city managers come in and sunset people's careers and bring in their own if it's justified. So, I don't know that I'd bring that operational issue into this recruiting document. I don't know that that's the right place, other than to highlight that we have current vacant upper management type positions.
That's a fair point. And I think the commission would be wise if they could get consensus between themselves to highlight that as an opportunity, a selling point for an incoming city manager.
Okay, great. Member Edwin.
Yes, I think the operational word for that is paralysis. You don't want to create paralysis.
Hit your green button.
You're better now?
No.
Push.
Okay,
Where it says push.
now it's very green.
Okay.
The operational word for this is paralysis. You don't want to create paralysis in the function of the city. If you try to wait for this and that, all you're doing is paralyzing a specific department or whatever that needs to get going and get the ball rolling. Any new leader will know how to handle the people he has on hand. That's my comment.
right. Why don't we, just in the interest of time, do we want to continue on, and then we could circle back if anyone's got additional comments on this?
Yeah.
Well,
All right.
The other thing I might add is if anybody thinks of anything after the meeting tonight or wants to elaborate on some things, feel free to email me.
Fantastic. And just remember, if you email Mr. Basinger, to also carbon copy Joyce.
Can I add one thing?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, two things. It sounds like everybody's assuming it's going to be a he.
Right, thank you.
I know, that's the generic term. Just real quick, too, in 1, 2, 3, paragraph, page 8, where we're talking about the city's infrastructure, and it says, it demonstrated the need to implement the other planned improvements, and just to put in there, and including the flow of emergency management. Not that the city's done a bad job, I just think there could be a lot of improvements in the aftermath and after the last situation.
Thank you. All right, so let me flip back to where we were. So next, we're going to move on to the ideal candidate, starting at the bottom of page 9, that takes us through page 10. And I can't remember where we started last time, so I'll just go, since Terry already has his placard up, we'll go to Member Haynes.
So in the overall description, I don't, and I'm not sure that this is the word that would be used, but I feel like one of the qualities too that this person needs to have is the ability to do branding, as far as like branding our city. I mean, we've all talked about we have a great city, we have the largest city in the county, and second largest in Central Florida, and we've got all these amazing things that they're on the first couple pages.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, could we maybe get one of the portable mics passed to him? These two gentlemen could share.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes,
Okay.
Thank you so much.
No problem. So what I was saying is I'm not sure this is the word we would use in this, but thinking about it from the marketing side, branding for the city, I feel like that's a quality that this candidate needs. And maybe it's in here somewhere that I've missed it, I didn't see it. But this person needs to be able to think strategically about marketing our city, whether it be bringing more commercial business to the city or bringing, I'm not sure I could say tourism, but bringing people into the city and to come into our city to do things. So I just feel like branding is something that we need to make sure that's kind of mentioned somewhere there. The other thing is on page 10, he, she should view the position as a destination, not a way station along the path of their career. That part's great, and stay a long time. And I noticed that's also repeated on, I think it's page 11. I just feel like there could be a better way to word that. To me, that's kind of, I don't mean to sound rude, but cheesy. It's just, I think we could do a better word on the better terminology for that.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry. On page 11, what is it?
Page 10 and page 11.
Okay.
For page 11, under the most recent city manager, second to the last sentence.
Okay.
The commission's committed to hiring the right manager, one who will stay a long time. I feel like that wording is not, we could do better than that.
I think you're right.
I'm not sure, I understand.
And I wrote it, so I think you're right.
We could do a better terminology.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, at the top under compensation, the commission would prefer to pay in the lower half of the range, but recognizes the talent can be costly and will pay as much as is needed within the range for just the right person. I don't like, personally, if I were reading it, my first thought, if I'm looking for this, if I'm interested in this job, I'm going to be like, oh, great, they're going to pay the lower half, and I have to really nail it to even be considered to make, I just feel like that is a negative connotation. Maybe it's just me personally looking at it.
I'll take that out. And
that needs
the
changed.
reason I would take it out, if for no other reason, is that the salary range was established at the last commission meeting as 160 to 200, and it's not a very high range, so that I think they'll pay wherever it is in that range, So,
Yeah, I don't think we have to emphasize the lower
no, we'll just
side
take
of
that sentence out.
And that's it for me. Thank you, sir.
Okay, great, thank you. Member French.
Okay, I This is mostly a general question, and it's based on what I'm seeing there on page 10, the second to last paragraph. It's kind of mentioning like qualifications there, so I'm wondering, is there actually going to be some kind of like stated qualification somewhere in this brochure, or are they going to be highlighted in some way through all of this that's going to be presented? Like it says, we mentioned, is it one of the exact qualifications? We're looking for somebody that has this such and such a degree, somebody who has this kind of association, things along those lines that you see in a standard application when you're looking there. So somebody sees, oh, okay, they want somebody who has disaster management skills. Well, this is probably not the job for me. Some of these high points listed as qualifying things for a candidate. That's it.
Great, thank you. Member Novick, you're up.
Nobody else? Okay. Again, this part here is kind of, there's a lot here, so forgive me if I did miss this. Somebody call my attention if I'm incorrect. There's a couple of things that, from my own personal experience and time here, I see as a big downfall or a big reason we continually lose city managers. There's a political side, but there's also the operational side of things. And something that's always been missing here has been succession planning. A strong organization will be able to carry on if you lose a part of that. And we seem to stumble if we lose a city manager, if we lose a fire chief, if we lose a public works director. Because all of these components in the city, and everybody's got their own thing. Troy's education background, I'm fire background, so everybody's got their own little thing that they look at. I get that. But everything is interdependent within the city. Every department relies on another department to do their part to keep the big machine rolling. So we've talked about strategic planning, and we have some strategic plans, and one of the most recent conversations was about stormwater. When Fritz Bering was here, there was a strategic plan development after research, after the 2004 hurricanes and the flooding and all of that occurred, and some of that was funded, and where that funding took place, there wasn't flooding this last big rainfall that we had. So we know it works if it's funded. The problem that happens in this city all the time is nobody's ever here long enough to carry out the entire plan, and the plan, it's researched, it's developed, it's started, it's funded, and then we lose people. So the way I think you combat that is to create a good succession planning and have people be able to pass the torch from one person to the next. So that certainly is something that an ideal candidate needs to demonstrate, is the ability to do strategic planning, succession planning, as well as personal and organizational career development. If you don't create a career development program and fund it, you won't have succession planning. If you don't take the talent that you have within the organization and groom them to move up to a position. And there are times, and a good city manager will balance this, there's times you need to infuse fresh blood too. Okay, because if you do, what's the definition of insanity? Do the same thing over and over again, expect a different result. Well, that's true with people within an organization. So it is good sometimes to bring in some fresh blood. But in general, the machine should always carry forward and keep moving the plan forward. So personal career development, a city manager that's interested in continuing through the League of Managers, League of Cities, League of Counties, so on and so forth, whatever developmental things are there for them. We shouldn't be satisfied with a city manager that's coming in with a bachelor's degree and is not pursuing a master's or some furtherance of their education. And we go back to the table and we talk about diversity, and I think the number is somewhere around 33 to 45% of our community being Hispanic-based. Well, certainly, we need to have a city manager that can relate and communicate with all of the community, and predominantly here we have a third of our people are Hispanic, so certainly the ability to be bilingual or possess some bilingual skills in that area, I think would be preferred, not required, but there should be some mention, I think, of looking at the language ability. And lastly, I looked at today, actually, I looked at several other cities, both Maitland and Destin were two that popped up for the state of Florida that are looking for city managers, and in both of those they talk about and highlight have the physical ability to do the job, not just the mental ability, but have the physical ability to get out and be in the community and do job shadowing with Public Works, Water Department, the hospitals, our schools, so on and so forth. So I think those are some things that were missing from an ideal candidate that I think would be beneficial, and I'm sure y'all probably have some more, so I'll shut up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Nabak. Member Shimkus.
Hello again. So to Nabek's point there, I had a note that just basically was a very shortened way of saying we need to highlight that we need someone who has the ability to find expertise in others and nurture that expertise as well for the same purpose of creating that succession plan in that environment. But I think that would be, just my way of saying it, only because I think that's where I'm looking, because I think we're obviously asking for a unicorn here, and we're not going to find anyone that's got all of these. I don't think we're going to find a single person that can do, I would even venture to say we won't find a single person that can proficiently do a third of the stuff that we've, I think, asked for. So to me, it's more important that someone understands that we would look for someone who has the ability to find and nurture stuff in that person and in the room around them. As just a personal bias, because I put it everywhere, and I know it's a little on the cliche side these days, but I would also, look for someone personally that understands how to use data to make decisions and drive information forward. Again, that's just a personal bias of mine in my career. And then lastly, I recognize that we have asked you to both remove wording and add wording, and it's too long, but add all these things. So with that in mind, I think this might be an opportunity in this section to look toward more of a bullet list of the top 5 to 10, shortened characteristics we want in someone, and shorten the wordiness of it by making it more bullets, so they don't have to search through a 10-paragraph essay and to find those cases. Because I know when working with some folks that are looking for jobs, they want to know, do I have the skills that they're looking for? And it's a lot easier for me personally to determine whether or not my skills are going to match if I see a list of what skills they're looking for as kind of a bulleted list and such as well. So just a thought there.
Thank you. Member Lasanta.
Sure, it's right. There we go. Are we in page 11 too, also?
Yes.
Okay. Who established the salary, the commission, 165 to 200,000?
Yes, last meeting.
Yeah.
There's 160. Actually.
What parameters or what expectations were talked about? Because you think you're going to get a very good candidate that's not going to be properly compensated? 200,000 is way below.
But we can't debate it.
Yeah, so
I know we can't debate that. That's not but somebody has to put some common sense of our commissioners, because if we need to look for a good candidate is not going to come for 200,000 or less.
Absolutely not.
I think I would recommend you watch the last commission meeting.
Yeah, we all agree with that.
Yeah, so that's my point.
We can, however, Madam Chair, we can enter it into our minutes of this, that if it's the position of the body, we can take a vote on that specific issue and make note that we feel that we are not going to get a substantial candidate for the salary range, and even go so far as if he wanted to suggest a modified range. At least we're on record that there's consensus with this board. We can certainly do that and enter it into the minutes for what it's worth.
I would, do we have a consensus to have that quick conversation?
Yes.
Is that what?
Yes.
Okay. So does anyone have a suggested range? I know I've got a suggestion. Go ahead.
I'm fine leaving the 160 minimum. I would like to see the top end of the range in the 150 or around.
150? Hold on.
You mean
Did you miss?
Sorry, 250.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wait a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, at the very least, and that's just kind of off the bat thinking that we need, and I don't even really like the idea of hammering it down that hard, so.
So I think, if I can, I don't want to interrupt, but just because of what you said in the last bit, I would entertain, or like to see us entertain at least, wording that would encourage a candidate to understand that there is a negotiation possible. That
Thank you.
You come to us and you are, because if I'm looking at this and I say they're topping out and based on you, we want to pay half the range or whatever, and I know that I am the whiz-bang person that can do that job in my sleep, I would still say, do I want to bother? Because it gives me the feeling that they're not willing to entertain what's best for them. But if we have language that you've used in the past, perhaps, because I don't know that I've got it in my head right now, that would indicate that there is opportunity for the rock star candidate to adjust that. I would say, my personal opinion is I do not agree with 160 as a bottom at all.
Thank you.
I think that sets a very bad idea. I think, and this is going to piss people off, and that's cool. We constantly hire consultants, and we have folks that ignore what the consultants say because they believe they know better. The problem I have with that is that they do not know better, and if we're not going to listen to our consultants or our boards, then we should not be hiring them. And I'm going to stop it that way because I will go on a rampage for that. However, I do think that, the original that you had suggested of being 180 to 240, I'm certainly comfortable with. I would expect our lowest range to have to come up because honestly, that does set a precedent. It sets a connotation that we are not looking seriously.
We're not serious.
That's a very fair point.
I would almost like to see the lower range start at 175. And then go up to 250. And I think if you've got a candidate that checks off all the boxes, right, then you offer them on the higher side.
Or even just, sorry.
No, I know we'll go to member Amorosa and we'll go around.
I'll go.
Yeah, but you haven't talked all night.
Right, yeah, exactly.
What he was saying about, we hire consultants. They said 180 to 240. I say the 180 to 240 is the way to go. That's all I got.
There you go.
Well, I was going to say, do you want a Super Bowl or just get to the playoffs? Okay?
Right.
So what I would do is, my base would be 2. I make good money, and I sell advertisement. If you want to get someone, the headaches he's going to have versus what I have, and I deal with about 80 to 100 dealers out there with general managers, dealer principals, of arsenal of products. This guy's got legal, training, leadership. I don't know, it's just me. It's my city, it's your city. Put something into them.
Member Kathy?
One of the most difficult things about the salary, though, is that it's hard to compare Deltona to surrounding cities, and that's one of the things that came up at the commissioning meeting, because how many cities have the residential to commercial base like we do? Like Daytona Beach, for instance, and in those areas have all the big events over there and stuff like that the manager has to do. That being said, Deltona has its own brand of challenges, but what I would really like to see is, let's start at the lower end and scale it up. Because, if somebody says, they seem like they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, we start them at 230. And then we find out they're nothing but a soggy loaf by the end of the year. Well, we're paying him that 230. So you get in here, you start, let's see how it's going after a certain amount of time, and then you scale up on a percentage base.
One thing we could do is say starting salary between 160 and 200, which would be fair. It doesn't get to the top, the 240 that we recommended, but it's better.
How is that different than what what was already approved, the 160 to 200?
It really isn't. It just sends a different message that if you are a superstar, you could move up.
But I like what Mrs. Brandt mentioned is, you probably negotiate and the incentives as time goes by, just like, ball players and everybody else get an incentive bonus for performance.
Yeah, you got to prove it. Show me that you're worth all that.
Correct.
And then we'll go from there.
But 165 is you're not going to get serious candidates, so my opinion.
Let's go to Member French, then Member Novick, and...
Thank you. This is where the rubber really meets the road, in my opinion, as per our function. This is something that we're recommending. But I agree. I think I've been trying to keep up with this. Is there not some kind of a scale that also goes with this individual's position where after the first year, there's a possibility of a raise or percentages thereafter? I thought maybe I'd seen something somewhere. But if something like that were put into the suggestion of a little bit more to invite somebody, that gives them more of the incentive if it does start low, with the incentivization that there's going to be more as your work progresses. If I'm putting this out there in case we're running into a brick wall with our recommendation about this, because we do have to have open minds, and hopefully the commissioners that are going to be listening to this will do the same.
Evaluation based, too.
I'm sorry, Member Novick, and then we'll go to Member Haynes.
Joyce, I'm going to put you on the spot because I'm ignorant about this, and you may or may not know the answer. Is this the salary range, or is this the starting salary range? Are we looking to hire a candidate between coming out of the box? Are we looking to hire a candidate from 160,000 to, what was the top number, 250?
200.
Are we looking to start them between 160 and 250? Or are we looking that they're going to come in and top out at 250?
The first option. I believe that they're going to go anywhere between 160 they do
160 and 250.
They're starting, that's their starting.
The wording in this is wrong.
Yeah, okay.
This is the starting salary range, not their pay range. Okay?
That feels a little bit better.
This is their starting, so they could start at 250 if the commission wants to start them at 250. They will receive by their contract a built-in automatic annual raise that is based upon their evaluation, depending on how they negotiate their contract.
Yeah.
Now, they could negotiate the contract that they automatically get 3% or get what the employees get every year, or it's from 1 to 5% based on the commission's evaluation of them. That's in the contract. That will be in the contract negotiation. So this is a starting salary range between 160 and 250 plus
it's 200 on the top.
Okay, 200 plus, which I agree is 160 to 200 is too low for a starting range. Okay, I'm on that, but I just want to make sure you understand this is not their pay range. This is their starting pay range. In addition to, they will have numerous other benefits that are not listed here. They may negotiate, if this is somebody coming from Michigan, let's say, they may negotiate moving expenses and the first 6 months of renting a house here. It's been done in the past, and that is common practice for this type of a position. They may also receive a vehicle allowance. They may also receive a data allowance, being cell phone, so on and so forth. So there's other, I just want you to understand, there's other
There's other compensation.
compensation besides the starting salary. With that, most city managers have all those other benefits in addition to the number, okay? But I think that's a very important distinction, that this is a starting range for the commission to go fishing with, but it is too low, and I would say it needs to be a minimum of 180 up to about 250. Needs to be their range that they're looking at. And again, if you just go on yourself and do a city manager search in Florida, you can see that we're way too low. And what you're going to do is, in 2 years, if all of us still live here and are still involved, you're going to be right back in this room doing this again. Garbage in, garbage out. It's just that simple. In order to get somebody, a quality person, you got to pay. You're going to have to pay something to get them to come in. And look at our history. Look at what a revolving door this has been. Would you pick up your family from North Carolina or from Michigan and come here for $160,000 a year?
Yeah.
No.
Well,
and I'll also say this, and I may be incorrect, but I think we got employees that have got W-2s that are higher than $160,000. So you're going to hire a boss that runs everybody, and he's going to have people under him making more than $160?
Yeah. I'll make a quick point and then we'll go to Terry, but just because you gave me a good segue, is that was what I had, is we also need to entice someone to move here, because the likelihood of having someone in our area and in our city, we would have already seen them in any one of our multiple city manager searches. And I can't say the word, I won't say the word here out of respect, but we also have the blank show surcharge, right? It may start with an S. Is anybody who is applying for this job is going to go back and watch our city manager, our city commission meetings and see some of the activities that go on there. So that is we are going to have to entice someone to want to take that challenge. I'm sorry, Mr. Basinger, did you?
Oh, I was going to say, there's no question that anybody who's worth hiring is going to be watching at least some of the commission meetings before they interview.
Yep.
So I'm prepared to make a motion whenever you're ready.
Can we get around?
Yeah, well, whatever.
Appreciate you. Why don't we go quickly to Terry, and then we'll go quickly to, you're good, Terry? Or
No,
okay.
So this is more toward any commissioner who happens to be listening or watching than this group, because I think the group is all in the same consensus. And I don't want to go down a whole rabbit trail of political drama, but we know where our where our city attorney has come in the last year or so as far as dollars are concerned. Mm-hmm. Not that having that city attorney is a very important role. We need to make sure everything's legal. I get that. But this person is going to be managing, they're the CEO of our city. To start them at, where we're talking about is low, but I would encourage our commission to sit down and think for a moment. If we have spent this huge amount of money on an attorney over the last year or two, we darn well better start investing in a city manager that's going to stay here and can manage things, and maybe then we don't need to pay as much to a city attorney because the drama we've dealt with. That was my one point.
Very good point. I think, why don't we go to Troy, and we'll go to Member Frank, sorry, and then we'll go.
I'll finish my comment.
Go ahead, Member Troy.
Okay, thanks. So just, real quick, I think, it's definitely key to understand starting salary versus range. That was a great point. I would also just say, I think we are kind of hemorrhaging into an area of discussing the contract and what a negotiation would look like. And so I've got a lot to say on that. So I know that's not for tonight, so I'm not going to go into all that. But I would say, just as a preview for that, the potential for milestone bonuses as opposed to just straight raises. If we we come to a contract and say, we have these milestones that we are looking for you to meet, and you hit this, you get that, you hit this, you get that, would be the other option there. But that goes back to my original point of including language that I know city managers understand this, and they've all negotiated their own contracts, that we are open for negotiating and maybe even, being creative in compensation options, but just those kind of things. So, but once we get to our discussions around the contract itself, we can discuss a lot of this more often or more in depth.
Yep. Member Lisa?
I agree with what Chris had to say. If we're looking for a manager long-term, we need to pay them whatever he or she is worth. We don't want somebody coming in here saying, well, I'm only going to make $160,000. I'll use this job as a stepping stone, learn what I can, and in 2 years, I'll just move on. And like Chris said, we'll be in the same position 2 years from now. We want somebody that has to focus on their job, gets paid for doing what they're doing, and doesn't have the thought in the back of their mind that, this is just a stepping stone for me. It'll look good on my resume, and I can just move forward. So that's just my opinion on the pay salary.
Thank you. Co-Chair Davison?
So, but there's a couple things I'd like to see. The clarification on the salary range, just to insert that it's the starting salary range. And I'd also like to, if we would consider suggesting that the salary range, while we provide an ideal salary range, we not limit ourselves to just that. That should be negotiable as well.
I would be fine with that if there was a realistic expectation that the commission might go along with that.
No, fair. That's a fair point.
I don't want to mislead anybody, because I've seen too many searches go south where the commission's at one point and the manager's over here thinking we don't do it, but some firms advertise depending on, the salary will be depending on qualifications. And when that happens, the candidates frequently think they're worth, say, $250, and the commission thinks they're worth $180, and it's a waste of everybody's time.
I understand that. And then I'm very much against the notion that we're going to bring somebody in and then arbitrarily give them a raise after 1 year or based off of some sort of, popularity contest with the commissioners. I don't like that. I think it's a challenge specifically to do that when you don't have those objective metrics. Yeah, and I don't know that you can get those objective metrics in this role. So if that's the way that the incoming candidate wants to negotiate their contract, that's so be it. I just don't think it should be part of our recommendation.
Right, so we'll do Member Bryant and then Member Hickerson, and then we'll move on.
Without getting too far off into the weeds, there's a number of different ways evaluations can be done, whether it's based on meeting specific goals or whatever, but so the other night at the commission meeting, one of the commissioners said, the manager selection committee talked about salary. And I said, no, we didn't. So the point is that they took a vote before we talked about it. And I didn't know that whether or not we could talk about this kind of stuff. And I'm glad we are. But I would rather see if we have that opportunity, let's do it before it goes to a vote on the commission. They don't have to listen to us because, goodness only knows they don't always anyhow, but at least we've put in our recommendation.
Madam Chair.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Madam Chair. So just so everybody knows, Colin had that sheet for you guys to discuss, but it wasn't put on the agenda, so you couldn't discuss it. And there were some significant errors on it. So the city manager and I had looked at it, reviewed it, but because it was something that was given out at the last minute, we went to Colin and said, we don't feel that this should be brought to you guys, because it is incorrect information and all that. But you are absolutely right. She did state that it went to you guys, and it had not.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, there was some data that there was I guess, a miscommunication between the city and us, and so we thought it was actual salary data and said it was budgeted data, and so we had Glenn making a rather large salary, about 50% more than he was really making, and that didn't seem to go, that's not what we wanted to put out in public.
Okay. All right, Member Hickerson?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I really do think that we should be at the 180 to 250 range. I just don't think that we're ever going to get off the hamster wheel that we've been on. We do have a lot of high expectations of this individual, and we get what we pay for, and we are worth paying for what we want. And like I said in our last meeting, it is a unicorn, and I think that we are cutting ourselves short and really limiting the pool of candidates by starting at such a low place and ending at such a low place. We're really wanting somebody who is excellent, who is knowledgeable in multi-areas of development and leadership. And I'm comfortable in making the recommendation to 180 to 250, but I'm realistic in that I think that the board has made up their mind, and they're comfortable staying on a hamster wheel. And I don't really know that anything that we say tonight can change that.
Thank you.
You brought up a good point before about the city attorney. If you want to be realistic about this and look, organizationally, they're equal. They're equal. They're the two charter officers of this city. Nobody else. So there needs to be some comparison there in terms of duties, responsibilities, and the compensation that they receive. Now, obviously, Marcia's got a significant amount of historical knowledge, and she's worked her way up. You certainly wouldn't want to start a new employee at what a 10 or 20-year employee is making. That demeans the existing employee. So, but you need to look at that, and they can go back historically and look at what the discussions were when they were hiring new city attorneys and draw some comparison there. When we talk about the evaluation process and that, any one of you in here ever been a city manager? No. Maybe you've been a manager, well, okay, with the exception you don't count.
Small cities.
Okay. My point being is, their job in our particular circumstance is like herding cats. Okay? You got 7 different personalities. They're not 7 bosses. There's only one boss, that's the commission. They have to take a vote, give direction, tell them what to do. But there's 7 different personalities up there that they have to deal with on a daily basis and try and keep some cohesiveness, if you will, of that group. That in and of itself is quite a talent, and like what Troy said before, it's, this person is not going to be an emergency manager, they're not going to be a sheriff, they're not going to be a public works director, but they need to recognize the qualities of what it takes to be successful in that job, and then have the ability to go to all the cats and get them to fund those programs that their folks say they need to have. So I don't want to belabor this, it's getting late. I'm going to make a motion that we make a recommendation to the commission to revisit the starting salary range to be 180 to 250.
Second.
Motion made by Member Novick, seconded by Co-Chair Harrier. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Anybody opposed? You have to ask.
Anyone opposed?
I don't want to see this, I'd like to come down to 230-ish, but.
So is that one opposed?
Was that one opposition?
Did I say 130 or did I say 230?
Doesn't matter, it's a yes or no.
If you're against it, I just need to know if you're against it.
Okay. But you'd prefer it to be higher, you just don't want to go to 250. Is that right?
So I just wanted to if we could because I think I was finishing up comments about the, about the ideal candidate, so I just had one point to make, and then we can open it back up. Did you give yours already? No. Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead.
No, you're
fine. All right, we'll go to Co-Chair Harriet.
Thank you. If you guys don't mind, after I do this, I am like 45 minutes late for another commitment. I'd like to see, Troy, to your earlier point of somebody that's got experience or familiar with data-driven decisions. I'd like to see that as a component of the ideal candidate. I'd also like to see disaster experience. It doesn't have to be in an emergency manager position, but somebody that has been through a disaster or their role as a manager through some sort of significant disaster. I think there's a lot of wordsmithing that could be done to make this more attractive to somebody. There's a sentence in here that says the individual will treat all elected officials the same and ensure that they all have the same information at the same time. I think that would be better wordsmith to something about equitable distribution of information to the commission or something along those lines. And then I really don't like the sentence in there that says the manager will focus on counting to 7, not 4. The individual will understand policies, but not be involved, or politics, but not be involved. I don't think that needs to be stated. I think that, to your point on the previous matter, they have one boss. It's the commission as a whole. It's not 7 bosses. It's one. It's the commission as a whole. And then throughout this whole entire document, there are a lot of areas where it lists things as a negative. So, for example, the ideal candidate will not be comfortable sitting behind a desk and giving instructions. I think that across the entire document, those negatives need to be turned into positives. For example, saying that the ideal candidate will be comfortable working with employees out in the field as well as behind a desk, or something to that matter, so that it's not using these negative terms.
Yeah, we can do that, I think. I see your point.
And then the next sentence makes a notion of always listening and seeking ways to improve the residents' quality of life, another wordsmith opportunity. He or she would be active in the community, and interested or interacting with residents with an eye for improvement opportunities, or something along that line. And then that's it. That's what I got.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And let me, Member Novick, I think we got sidetracked on the salary conversation when you might have been at your point talking about the ideal candidate. I didn't know if you had any other points you wanted to finish up before we go back around.
I think he's exactly on point with some of the wordsmithing. That this portion of the document is the crux of the document. This is the most important part of the document. This is our expectation. Okay, this isn't bringing them up to speed. This is our expectation of what we want to see. So this is a crucial part of this that needs to be gone through. And the positive, I mean, that's the way you always should be wording this stuff, is in the positive and not bringing out the negatives. So I'm good with the other suggestions.
Thank you. Member DeLisa, I wasn't sure if I saw you raise your hand earlier.
I just had a quick question. I am totally unfamiliar with what salary should be for a city commissioner. Is there a way that we did a comparison study of Deltona?
Yes, that was done by Mr. Basinger's group.
I can email that to everybody after the meeting. But yes, we did a comparison. We do a salary survey in Florida every year. It's actually more than salary. It's benefits and leave and all kinds of things. But the key thing is salary. And we took cities that were approximately the same size as Deltona, plus or minus 15,000 in population. and looked at salaries both statewide and then tried to localize it a little more. Looked at I think it was Palm Coast and Daytona, Port Orange, Melbourne. And we came up with if we look statewide, frankly, the range would have been higher. It was a little bit lower once we got out of South Florida and some of the metropolitan areas, which I think was, reasonable there. They tend to be more expensive and pay more. But I think the one thing that I tried to emphasize to the commission is that you're going to be competing against cities in South Florida probably for some of these managers. And if they have a choice of paying getting a salary of $240 or $160, what are they going to do? So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I do not see any other placards up, so I'll close with, I'm sorry. Remember,
Sorry. I just wanted to make a comment under where it says the most recent city manager.
Speak.
Yeah, I need to
I
reword
fuss about
that.
this all the time. The last permanent city manager resigned under pressure in January 2020. Well, there was a lot of extenuating circumstances around that, and it almost sounds like it was the city's fault. And there may have been some blame all around, but the fact of the matter is she pulled a lot of stuff, and so I feel like that kind of puts maybe the city under a negative light. The last permanent city manager, who wasn't here very long, was actually hired.
Yeah.
I think we discussed that at the meeting the other night. He was hired and then as interim, and then hired on permanent, and then he left. So under pressure, probably.
I don't know whether it was under pressure or whether he just decided it was more fun to be retired again.
Well, amen.
I mean, there's a lot of issues here, and
But yeah, I really especially don't like the way the first sentence reads.
yeah.
And just a point. I know we've talked a lot about how you pay you get what you pay for and stuff like that. Well, sometimes you overpay and it's cheap goods, so it can go both ways. So keep that in mind.
Thank you. All right, so I'll keep it super brief. So I had two comments. The first one was on page 9. Oh, nope, I take that back, pardon me, page 10. The second paragraph from the last, the ideal candidate will have at least 10 years experience in local government, 5 years. I heard quite a few of the commissioners talking about opening it up to folks maybe with some different backgrounds. So I'd like to, I don't know if we can reword that to just make it a little more inclusive of folks maybe in the private sector with some solid, strong corporate CEO background. I know some are shaking their head, but that did come up several times.
It's really a different ballgame, but my comparison typically is you got an NBA coach and you've got an NFL coach, and you never see an NBA coach go coach in the NFL. We have recruited people. Now, I'm not excluding people from the private sector. I could add a statement that people from other sectors of the employment could be added, that will be considered. Accomplished individuals from other, and I'll have to figure out exactly how to say it, sectors will be considered, or something like that.
Yeah. I think that would work for me. And then to echo Kathy's point is the same thing at page 11, the most recency, I think we could just remove that under pressure, right? Just keep it to the fact. The last permanent city manager resigned in January 2020. And I don't think we need to put any subjective phrasing in there.
Yeah, I can certainly take that out.
And those were the only two additions I had to, other than what everyone else had already mentioned. So we've gone through. Is there a motion to approve the city manager recruitment brochure with the recommended changes?
I can't
Nope.
I can't support doing that until we see the document.
See the final document?
We're going to have to review what he reworked. I mean, we gave him a lot of latitude, all due respect.
I think you're right. I think you should see it again.
Yeah.
But
I'm not sure I'm going to get it right.
Exactly. And I just want to go on the record with you officially right now, with all due respect, Madam Chair, I will not, under any circumstances, support a vote of approving any document that doesn't include the verbiage that we're looking for somebody with government experience. I can't in good conscience. There's no comparison. Your analogy is perfect of the NBA coach and the NFL coach. You have to have a city manager. This isn't a learning ground for them here. To come over and become a first-time city manager just because you were the CEO of a company, it's oil and water. It doesn't mix. There is some basic economic principles maybe apply, but legal principles of budgeting and labor agreements and completely different public sector to private sector. It would have to be coming from some type of government entity, and I couldn't support a document that would encourage anything other than somebody with government experience coming in.
All right.
You know, one of the things, we've looked at this a lot over the last, and I've been doing this now almost 26 years, and what I've found is when we've been asked to look for private sector candidates, we will. I've never seen one hired, however, by a government. It seems like once the elected officials look at their credentials, it's kind of like, well, I've got somebody who's experienced in government, I've got somebody who isn't. I'm just not comfortable hiring somebody who doesn't have the government experience. Now, that said, it doesn't necessarily have to be local government. There are some professions, I think, that are similar enough. For example, we've placed 2 or 3 former retired military individuals that were garrison commanders. Now, as a routine matter, I wouldn't actually consider a military retiree, but a garrison commander, for example, typically has a workforce that's about 90% civilian. And so when you say jump, they kind of look at you like, what? They also have on base 2 or 3 generals, for example, plus they've got another general they report to. So the politics is there. It's different, certainly, from being a city manager, but you've still got to understand how to really interact with people that are your superior. What we find with most private sector people is that, frankly, they're not interested. You pointed out some very good things, but also a city manager's got it's more like manage a conglomerate. They've got planning, they've got public works, they've got dog catching, well, not necessarily, but public safety. Whereas a guy in the private sector or a woman will have radios or spacecraft or something. It's just there's one product line to focus on. The goals are pretty straightforward. Make a profit. The goals in the public sector are whatever the commission thinks they are.
Should be level of service.
Yeah, I mean, improving the quality of the life of the residents. But there's so many different aspects to that. It's not like you can focus just on making a profit. So,
well,
I think by saying accomplished individuals from other sectors will be considered, I think that kind of deals with it.
Again, I personally will not support anything other than it's got to be government experience. Anything other than that, I can't support it. It sets up a conflict in our charter form of government where you have the city attorney and the city manager equally answering to the commission. because you have a private sector mentality that would come in that would be, as you said, profit-oriented, as where the city attorney is looking at, it's a different playbook that you use in the government sector than in the private sector. And then the city attorney could be advising the commission, no, we need to do it this way. The city manager could say, no, it's my call, we're doing it this way. Then it gets set up for a legal failure, and it dumps on the city attorney to fix, and it just sets up, I think it sets up a lot of conflict if you don't bring a manager in that is well-versed in the public sector.
Mm-hmm. No, and what I was going to state is, you're the consultant we brought, obviously, you know, right? This is new to a lot of us. So if the consensus, and if your suggestion is we keep it as is, I'm comfortable with that. I just wanted to bring that up because I do know a few of the commissioners mentioned it, but at the end of the day, if this is something that we're all comfortable with, then it stays.
Okay. I would probably leave it the way it is. It does say the ideal candidate, so it doesn't preclude people from applying. It just says that, we really want somebody from local government.
Right. So do we want to set up another meeting, or is the intent for you to email? Would you email us the changes for all of us to view?
We could do it either way. I think maybe at this point the quickest way might be for us to go ahead and make the changes, put it in the glossy version, and give it to you to look at, and then let us know what else you want changed. And I would think we could have that to you in, within a week anyway.
I personally think there's a great deal of benefit for me, I'm just speaking for me, to listen to this group and their feedback rather than us individually sending him stuff back and then he tries to incorporate it. I mean, it's I'm letting you know, I'm not moving off of that 5 years to 10 years of experience in government thing. So I think we'd do better to hash it out again when he gives us a final draft, if you will. And then if we're in favor of it, we can vote at that. We got to get together to vote anyway.
But can we have that emailed to us in advance?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'd have to.
Because I'd like to actually be able to.
Yeah, we have to have the time to review it.
And then come back as a group and be able to do that.
And basically, we're going to have to extend the schedule, that's all.
Yeah.
And, we need to do it right, let's face it, so.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Mr. Bainzinger, is the point also to have the commission review this?
I was thinking, frankly, that if the committee approved it, that we could go forward in that manner. Frankly, the other thing is, if we say extend it at 2 weeks, give me 4 or 5 days to get you a draft and give you a few days to look at it, and then meet again, say, in 2 weeks. That gives the commission some time to reconsider the salary. It's hard for them to do anything without having a meeting, so.
Madam Chair, I do have a question.
Yes.
And this is probably Joyce is the one that would be able to answer it. We had a great conversation here about salary and sending the recommendation back, and then we were talking about down the road, talking about the contract. Looking at the email list that was sent to us of like the long-term agenda that was on that Excel doc, I don't see anything in there that this group will talk about that. I see like once the decision has been made to hire, that the recruiting firm and city representatives will have a conversation. My question is, does this committee have the opportunity to make recommendations to the commission, who I guess will pick whoever these representatives will be? How does that work, or how will that work?
I know in the past, the negotiation process is basically it's up to the commission, and we usually do have, it's usually the mayor, I believe, with the city manager, the potential candidate, maybe one other person in there, and they negotiate, and it just keeps getting brought back to the commission until they approve it. You all can always individually email those commissioners your thoughts at any time. about anything having to do with the new potential candidate, the process, any of that. And I highly recommend that you do that. That is probably your best way of communicating with them.
And do we need to CC you when we email the commissioner as well then? On that?
Yeah, I would do that just so that I have a record of it.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Suspected date to meet again?
I think we were talking about 2 weeks from tonight, but I know Joyce, she's got several calendars she's got to clear and make sure there's not a conflict with any other meetings. So
Yeah.
2 weeks from today tentatively would be February 1st, if folks want to tentatively block that. And then Joyce, would you just email us all to confirm that?
You said February 1st?
That's what that's what I'm seeing on my calendar.
Yeah, that would be 2 weeks.
I personally won't be here until the 6th, but if I could have a proxy to vote for me, I could assign somebody. Can I do that?
Well, you could
email.
Zoom in.
Right.
You could Zoom in.
I'll be at sea, and I'm not going to buy the communication package because I want to disconnect from everything.
Good for you.
Put your vote in a bottle, throw it overboard, and hope that it gets here in time.
If you see it before the draft again, before you...
I'm sorry, what was that?
If you see the draft before you go of the brochure, you can always email your opinions about it. You can put your input in on it.
I leave next Tuesday, so I won't be.
Oh, you won't be, yeah, okay. Bon voyage.
So if we do February 1st, as of right now, I don't show anything in here or on the calendar. But that would mean that Mr. Bainzinger would need to get me all of the revisions and the agenda items and everything no later than 5 o'clock on the 23rd, which is next Tuesday. Because the agenda would have to go out that Wednesday.
Yeah, I frankly plan to go home and work on it tomorrow, because if I wait until Monday or Tuesday, it won't be fresh in my mind.
I just want to make sure everybody's got enough time to do what they need to do.
Yeah, no, I think I'll be fine now. I suspect I won't get everything because, I do have some questions for you, Joyce, and for some of the other staff, but, and maybe I'll even, well, I don't know. No, I do have some questions.
Okay, so just so everyone knows, 2/1, 6 p.m. is tentatively our next meeting, and Joyce will confirm that with us, and if there is no other business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, good meeting. Good.